Call it Islamic State or ISIS, that is Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIL, Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or Daesh, as many Arabs would call it. Whatever you call it, we're talking about an organisation or a movement of pure evil. This is an Islamist extremist movement that used terrorism and grotesque violence to create their dream of an Islamic caliphate in Iraq and Syria in 2012 and 2013. They ran it for about 6 years, slaughtering people of other religions or Muslims who wouldn't join their extremist movement. Women were raped, they were sold into slavery and murdered. Children were killed or brought into the savagery. Incredibly, 200 or more Australians left this country to join the caliphate, to join the bloodlust. Think about what that says. We had 200 or more Australians who wanted to be part of this. It's believed about 100 of them were killed, 40 or so came back to Australia, and the others' fates, well, they remain unknown. Yet some of them still live among us. Police allege that the gunmen who slaughtered 15 innocent people at Bondi in December were inspired by ISIS. An ISIS flag was found in their car. This is what we're dealing with, which is why there is such concern about reports today that so-called ISIS brides, wives of former ISIS terrorists, are on their way from Syria to Australia. In all, it's believed 11 families and 34 people are on their way. They left an internment camp in Syria en route to Damascus and flights to Australia, but apparently they were turned back in Syria last night because they didn't have the right travel documents. Reports from Syria say this is just a delay and they'll resume their journey soon. The Prime Minister says the government is not organising this evacuation.
We won't repatriate them, and indeed the government was taken to court by one of the non-government organisations saying that we had a responsibility, and they weren't successful in that. My mother would have said, if you make your bed, you lie in it. These are people who went overseas supporting Islamic State and went there to provide support for people who basically want a caliphate. And, you know, it is...
unfortunate for the children, though, caught up in that, isn't it?
It is, but we have a very firm view that we won't be providing assistance or repatriation. Of course, Australian law applies and there are obligations that Australian officials have, but we want to make it clear as well, as we have to the people involved, that if there are any breaches of the law, then they will face the full force of the Australian law.
Yeah, if these people are Australian citizens, then they have a legal right to return home. Although, as the Prime Minister said, some could face criminal charges on their return. Under the former Morrison government, some orphaned children of ISIS fighters were brought back into this country. And under the Albanese government, some adults and children have been allowed in over recent years. This time, however, the coalition is calling on the government to block the families from entering the country.
These are individuals who chose to associate with a terrorist caliphate. This is not aligned with the values we as Australians believe in: democracy, the rule of law, our basic freedoms, including freedom of religion. The door must be shut to people who do not believe in those things.
Of course, we don't want ISIS sympathisers in this country. We don't know the individual circumstances of the mothers, but the children have no choice in these affairs and are most likely entitled to Australian citizenship. Prominent Australian Lebanese GP and former Australian newspaper Australian of the Year, Jamal Rifi, is reportedly with the families attempting to arrange their travel to Australia. Now, I know Jamal and I respect him. I've reached out to him without any luck so far. I'd be keen to hear his take on all this. This issue highlights the crucial inflection point that this nation is at with terrorism, extremism and social cohesion. The Albanese government, as I've said repeatedly, ad nauseum in fact, for the past 27 months, it's been too soft on anti-Semitism and Islamist extremism. And over that period, it's issued 3,000 visas to people from the Hamas-controlled Badlands of Gaza, something that's extremely risky and unwise, given security checks could only have been cursory. We're dealing with the fallout from the worst terrorist attack in our nation's history. An ongoing elevated terrorism alert level, hate preachers in our midst, and the government looks like it won't prevent the return of ISIS families. Anthony Albanese says the government won't repatriate them. That just means he's not organising the returns. So far, it hasn't said it will block them. And we don't know who's funding all of this. Albanese has failed every test on these crucial issues for more than 2 years. You couldn't trust him and his team to get this one right.